like to call to order the workshop for the mayor and city council city of Taneytown for Wednesday, May the 3rd. Ask Councilman Vigliotti to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome everyone. It is a grand and glorious day here in Taneytown, at our first regular meeting after our election on Monday. I want to congratulate Councilman Vigliotti, Mayor Pro Tem Foster, and our newest councilman-elect, Judy Fuller, for a wonderful and impressive campaign and quite a victory margin of almost 2-1. So it was very much appreciated that you all came out and supported these candidates. I think we've made a real statement for the future of Taneytown and its future success. So thank you very much for your support. All council members are present and accounted for. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes for April 5th and April 10th. Does anyone have any questions or comments or changes for the minutes for April 5th and April 10th to be considered on Monday night?
We do have updated minutes for April 10th on the table.
Yep. Hearing nothing, they'll be up for your approval.
What are the changes in the updated minutes? Why are we have updated minutes?
For the council meeting, I had forgotten to omit the section that's right underneath the opening where it says, this is a council workshop.
On the previous, this was accidentally left in.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it's been
okay.
taken out on
All
the
right, thank you for that.
All right. They'll be up for approval on Monday night. Next, we'll receive public comment pertaining to non-agenda items. Remember to come to the podium if you have anything to say. Identify yourself and where you live, and hold your remarks to 3 minutes. Anyone care to make a comment?
Good evening, Robin Fraser, 142 Bentley Street. I just wanted to express my gratitude to all of the folks that participated in the election. One of our goals is to get more people involved, and I would say this must be one of the largest turnouts. The special election was a little different, but for council election, almost 1,000 people, and I think that's wonderful. It's important for people to be involved in their government, and we'll continue to come and participate and hold you all accountable, and we hope that there'll be 1,000 other people doing the same thing. So thanks a lot for everybody who worked so hard. It's fun. It builds camaraderie, and again, it's just part of our goal is to get everybody involved. So I thought it was a great election day. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to make a comment?
Kelly Bowie, 106 Flanagan Drive. I usually do not step up here and speak to you. However, the day of the election and some terms that I feel need to be emphasized to all of you. As far as the election is concerned, I want to emphasize the word nonpartisan. We have to put the D's and the R's aside and work together for the future of our town and our citizens. I do not like the idea that robocalls were involved and used a pro-life punch to get the town out. and shame on whoever did that. I would also like to see in future elections, like a no harassment zone. I feel like it was like sharks feeding. I would like for people to be able to vote the way they want to without being harassed. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to make a comment?
Hello, Catherine Adelaide, 9 Cortlandt Street. I'm so glad to see a crowd sitting right up front and center. I was getting kind of lonely sitting in the front row all the time, so I'm glad y'all stepped up to the front. I don't know if Mr. Gullo remembers the conversation we had out on the sidewalk where I said I would rather see more people involved and lose an election. Remember that 2 years ago? So my wish came true, and I'm absolutely thrilled that if the city's going to steal an election, you had to work for it. You had to work for it. You had to get your people out there, and you had to do what we did, and I think it's great. And I want to congratulate and thank all those voters who did not buy into the fear tactics of the council or the Doomsday Davenport report, and were brave enough to put out our signs. One of my main issues with this city is the bullying, and I've seen it on the council, and whether I agreed with any of you or not, if I saw that kind of bullying going on with anybody in the majority, I would stick up for you too. And I did have several voters who were concerned about bullying at school, bullying at the city council, people ganging up on one or two people, scapegoating them, targeting people. Regarding nonpartisan elections, as our newest appointee to the ethics board rightly said, there's no such thing as a nonpartisan election. So I think that's in there no matter what you do, and I'm not ashamed to be a Republican. I'm not ashamed that Republicans supported me. There's room for Democrats, there's room for independents. I registered a young lady who she said, I don't know, she didn't even want to get registered. And I said, well, based on what you've told me, I think the Green Party would really fit you. And she signed up for the Green Party. So I think it's a matter of tolerance rather than saying there's no such thing as partisan elections. Regarding the robocalls, that's just a freedom of speech issue, and people have a right to their opinions. In terms of no harassment, that's why we have a 100-foot non-electioneering zone. Beyond that, we are free to speak to people and try to convince them to our point of view, as both sides did. Finally, regarding this Davenport Doomsday Report, I just wanted to read a couple of things from the disclaimer at the back. This material was not produced by a research analyst, although it may refer to a Davenport research analyst or research report. I have to scratch my head about that. It says, we make no representations or warranty with respect to the completeness of this material. Well, that's very accurate. This material was not complete. It did not include the large surplus. It did not include new development. So if the only thing you count...
Three of us.
Is my time up?
Time's up.
And finally, Davenport does not represent that any such assumptions
You're out of
will
order.
reflect actual
You're out of
future
order.
events.
Sit down, please.
Thank you. I
Anyone
didn't hear
else
your
care
buzzer
to
go
make-
off.
Anyone else care to make a comment? All right, hearing nothing, we'll move on. I need to ask the council if there's any items in the agenda tonight that will create a conflict of interest for anyone.
No, sir.
No.
Mr. Mayor, I'll recuse myself from the biosolids hauling recommendation.
Okay. On Monday night, we'll have the adoption of Resolution 2017-06, the water allocation for May of 2017. Anyone have any questions on the water allocation resolution? Nothing, we'll move into the city manager's report.
Well, as you can see, there's very little to report this month. And other than we're working to finalize the capital projects, and we'll have that hopefully before you next month. Right now, the major issue is all of that work is done. It's a matter of putting it into some sort of presentation that's readable. Right now, I've got a spreadsheet, as you remember, 25 years. It's really long. So we're just putting the format together that becomes a little bit more readable.
Henry, is that going to be prioritized by staff, or are you looking for us to kind of weigh in on that?
Well, it's going to be prioritized by staff. You're going to prioritize it by money.
Okay.
So if you don't have the money, then it drops down.
Okay.
Any questions for Henry? All right. Any questions on any of the departmental reports?
I have one thing, Henry. I know that Dan is working on migrating everything over from the old website to the new website. Is there an idea about when that'll be completed? Because it was brought to my attention, for example, that some of the stuff hasn't been completely updated. You know, the business directory is still from 2013, and I was just curious if there was a time frame for the...
No, there isn't a real time frame for that, and his schedule has been bouncing all over the place. He's currently working with the police department and installing the new camera equipment.
Gotcha. So basically, as soon as he can get to it, okay.
That's more of a priority now
Right.
to do that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to draw everybody's attention to page 3 of the Recs and Parks report. We do have our Recs and Parks Advisory Board meeting at 7:30 on May the 10th, but something great is happening at 6 o'clock that day, and encouraging everybody in Taneytown to come out with that. The Recs and Parks Committee is going to meet at 6 p.m. and for a walkthrough of Bollinger Park. I suggested during the budget allowance hearing that since we had extra money in the general fund after the transfer of all those funds, that we might be able to develop the access road and the parking lot for Bollinger Park in order that we could more fully access that. We'll discuss that at 6 p.m. So I'm inviting everybody in town to come out and join Recs and Parks at 6 o'clock for a special walkthrough. If you're not familiar with the Bollinger Park, it would be a fun time to walk through with them and discuss your ideas as well. So I want to bring that to everyone's attention.
Anybody else have any comments on the departmental
Yeah,
report?
don't forget to bring your boots if you're going.
Well, that's good. It's a bit of a trek ride.
Probably
They're gonna be
mosquito
muddy.
spray. Hopefully, when the Bollinger Park project is complete, it'll be completely handicapped accessible, but it's not right now.
No.
Just want to point that out before you come out there.
Can I add another thing there?
Certainly.
Just a calendar of events, luminary lights, May the 15th, annual fishing derby, May the 20th, Taneytown Wine Fest the 17th of June, concert in the park the 22nd, Family Fun Days, August 18th through the 19th, Family Fall Harvest Work, October 7th, and Mid-Atlantic Cyclocross Championships, all November 24th in the Recs and Parks report, just as a calendar of event. So if you can get a copy of page 3, there's both of those many announcements there on that page for the general public.
Okay, any other comments on the departmental reports? We have a grand opening at the barber shop, Family Barber Shop, up on York Street at Saturday at 10 o'clock. And also the pet parade is behind the police station this year. The barber shop ribbon cutting is at 9 o'clock, the pet parade's at 10 o'clock. I want to correct that. So you're all invited to come out to that too. All right, let's move into the legal report.
3 items for you tonight, Mr. Mayor. The first is the report from the Ethics Commission. The Ethics Commission met as part of their duties with the election, but at one of their meetings, they reviewed the yearly financial disclosure forms that all elected officials and key employees have to fill out. And everybody filled them out. Everybody who had to make corrections made the corrections, so we again have 100% compliance with those forms. There was some confusion about quarterly forms versus the yearly forms. So what they're going to do is you'll get a form at the end of June, which is your quarterly form, and you'll say nothing has changed if that's the case. You'll get another one at the end of the third quarter. You won't get one at the end of the fourth quarter. You'll get the full form at the end of the fourth quarter because it will report on the entire year. You'll get some instructions on that when it happens, but
The General Assembly passed new ethics standards this past session. Does that affect what we're doing here?
it's going to enhance what we do here. We're going to have to modify things. There's several different things that we're going to have to look at, including bringing things online by 2019. So, I mean, not filling them out online, but displaying them online by 2019. So, yeah, the enaction date of that is, I believe, October, so we have some time to figure that out. Second item deals with the paper alley. Remember, we talked about the paper alley the last two meetings. The Planning Commission met, discussed it. They've done it twice, but they discussed it and decided at the last session that they made a motion that they would recommend to you that you do not get rid of a paper alley, that you do not lose transfer. I mean, you do not transfer it in any way or form, that the city retain whatever right it has to the alley, that they retain that. There was no opposition to that and one recusal. So that's the report. Unless you want to do something different, then we're just not going to put it on the agenda, if that, because you don't need to make a motion to do that if you don't want to continue that course.
Is it all right if I ask why their recommendation was not to get rid of it?
They felt that even though that in the specific case here, that there's some question as to the title to it, they believe that the city should never turn away property it already owns because we're entity in perpetuity, and at some point in time, we may need that, and then we won't have it. And that it was dedicated as a street at one point in time. Why would we go through the trouble of having to buy it back or condemn it when we already own it? So that was
May I
there.
ask a question also? Didn't we have one or more property owners ask for the town to take a position regarding their property adjacent to non-existing paper alleys?
That's this one. And to the
Did
property.
one property owner or more than one?
It was one property owner that requested that we declare it surplus so that they could have it. And they made their
Was it
presentation.
an issue about maintaining that land, or was it that they were concerned about
They wanted it
paying
because,
taxes on it, or whether it was part of their parcel?
no, their issue, the property in question was the Hitchman, but not where the Hitchman trailers are. So the Hitchman owns property closer towards the square. And their issue was they want to redevelop that property by expanding their show area, and they wanted to use that as their access point and be able to reconfigure it for their own personal property. And that's what their request was, of wanting it in the first place. And they came and made a presentation to the Planning Commission, and so that was all
See that.
factored in.
Thank you.
Okay, no questions on that. The last issue I want to bring up is a continuation from last month. You know, I was quite vehement about the violation of the attorney-client privilege by Councilman Frazier with the disclosure of the letter and posting it on Facebook. And last month I told you that what I would do to make it very succinct would create a memo for you that outlined the details, outlined the law in the area, and gave you all of that information. So on your table tonight, I have that for you. I don't expect you to read it. Again, that is attorney-client privilege, so we're not going to read it out loud unless a majority of you vote to do that. But I want you to read that and understand what that means and the implications of that. The concerning part that I have, when you read that, I want you to realize that this isn't a first time. I wrote you a letter back in December 29th of 2015 about the same issue of attorney-client privilege being violated by disclosure of material. And that was the reason why there's no more legal reports in your package. So that memo in 2015 outlined how you can disclose things, who has the authority to do it, and a cautionary that anything you read from me that's marked attorney-client privilege shouldn't be disclosed. And when I finished your memo, I basically have said I copied the same language in the last memo to end it. I don't know what you all are going to do about this. it really puts a problem on me communicating with you if I believe that that's going to be a violation. The Maryland Rules of Professional Conduct require the attorney to protect the attorney-client privilege. It says that if I believe that it's going to be violated for some purpose, that I need to go to the higher authority and tell the higher authority that I believe it's going to be violated. And that's what I did last month, and I'm doing it again, telling you that this continuous conduct of disclosing this stuff would violate that and puts the city in a bad position. And I think you need to figure out how you're going to stop that and what you're going to do about it, because I feel like I can't put things in writing to advise you. So it's defeating the entire purpose of the attorney-client privilege, which is to allow free disclosure between the client and the attorney, because we know those disclosures won't get shared publicly, and then that way we can get the best legal advice to protect the city, which is the client. So those are my concerns.
Well, Mr. Mayor, in regard to my name and this accusation, I did consult with my attorney about this, and the key issue is asking a question about whether my letterhead complies with the recently passed policy of the council. It's not a vital public interest. And I have, since I'm a councilman and you work for the city, then essentially I'm the client and I have the ability to release that document as I choose to release it. That's
right.
His position and mine. I take your point that it would be unwise to release many things that we've discussed in executive session in public, and I've already agreed to that. But on this particular issue, I wrote you another letter explaining that this is about whether or not me using the city seal on that letterhead when I first elected, and then the revised copy that you didn't mention tonight, I mentioned that letter to you as well, because when I'm threatened, I take it rather seriously that me being able to ask a question of my attorney is an important part of my ability to sit on the council. I hope people can see that this is about my letterhead regarding the sanctuary city's vote of the council 4-0 a few months before the election. So I'd like to encourage my colleagues to review this in the light of the fact that it's not a vital public interest, it's not a sealed bid or any other matter, and to not take the advice of council that this is such a major thing. I appreciate you bringing it up, though. It is a thing that all councilmen should be careful with.
Well, I appreciate that you checked into it, and the issue that we have, I mean, you're right on the edge of the issue, is it really can't be your determination of whether it's a vital public interest. It needs to be a majority of the council's determination of whether it's a vital public.
I feel you violated my privilege when you shared our correspondence with the other council members. You didn't ask my opinion if you could share that with the other council members.
And I want to make that very crystal clear.
Because I have a privilege,
You do not have any attorney-client privilege with me regards to
Well,
them.
you shouldn't answer my letter if you didn't think it was appropriate to do so.
I am not your personal attorney. You didn't
You're
pay
my
me
town
any
attorney.
money. Right.
I can't ask a question of my council attorney?
You can certainly ask that, but I'm answering your question because you're an officer of the corporation. So therefore, we do not have a personal attorney-client
But you, without
privilege.
my permission, sent CC to every member of the council
That is
on your
the-
response.
And that is supposed to happen because you all are the client collectively. And maybe I'm not being clear on that, is that my client is the city. The city has an attorney-client privilege with me. You all are the officers of the city. I can't just talk to the city since it's an entity, so you all are the ones that make those decisions. So any conversations I have with any of you is not protected against the rest of you because you all are the city's in a whole.
I think you should ask permission of me if you wanted to release that to everyone, but you took it upon yourself to do so.
Because that's the proper
I
thing.
sent a letter to you asking for advice from the attorney.
If you wanted advice,
about this
like-
letterhead, because I was called out on it at a council meeting. I think I described that.
My retort to you is,
Obvious difference of opinion here, and it's not going to get solved tonight.
Well, I just want
But
the
we
public
certainly
to know that
need to
nothing
respect
grave
our
or
attorney's
difficult happened to the city in this
interpretation of
matter.
this. The issue wasn't what was said, it was but the fact that it was disclosed under attorney-client privilege. That's the concern. Now, does anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, I have something I'd like to say, very much. Thanks for this list. I've glanced over it rather quickly. There's any other number of things, and I think it would be proper if we would move for a censure of Don on Monday night.
You certainly have the ability to police your own. You know, I cannot tell you the contents nor the contents of the other letter in public session unless you waive that. We've talked about that. But the concern I have is still present, even with what you've said tonight, is the fact that you believe that you can make the determination of when to disclose things.
I just think you're the city attorney, and I can ask a question of the city attorney.
You can,
And I did
100%,
so.
and that's encouraged. But my answers to you are confidential because you're an officer of the city. If one of the audience who is not a member of the city asks me a question, they're not my client, I wouldn't give them advice, but you're my client because you're part of the city. And I guess to make matters worse.
That's it,
when
and
this
I'm
was-
the one with declaring-client privilege because I'm your
No,
client.
you are, I said this.
You
okay?
violated my
The
privilege
city,
by sharing our conversation about my letterhead with everyone.
Here's
you
the
need-
problem.
if your attorney gave you advice that says you're my client,
You just said it in your own words. That's all I wanted to point out. You just said, they're not my client, but you're my client.
Here's where-
Did you say that or not?
of course, collectively.
Okay, that's
Okay,
all I'm saying.
You
That's
got
my
me.
opinion.
That's right, you used my words. Here's the thing that showed us total disregard to this whole thing. When I brought this to your attention, you didn't take it down from Facebook. It's still there.
I think the public has the right to know whether we can use a letterhead or not.
My exact point. You thought the public has the right to know based on my opinion. It's still on Facebook. You didn't show any recalcitrance to say, wow, I should take this down because it's controversial.
If I had done
It's still
something
there.
that injured the city in any way, I would have certainly remediated that. But I'm asking questions because I've been pilloried about the use of a letterhead, and I want to know what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do.
I gave you that advice.
Right, and that's here's what I think the crux of the problem is. You consider yourself an individual regardless. The problem is when you've been elected to the council, you are now a member of a council, and we make collective decisions. You are no longer the individual when you sit up here with us.
I agree
We
with
make
that.
a collective decision. So that's what he is saying. Attorney-client privilege is with the collective. When one of us goes to him, it can be shared with the rest of the council without a problem. Because we all make that decision of what can be spread or
Well,
not.
can I get an answer about letterhead from the attorney or not?
You did.
You did.
And you
Why
can
would
get it.
anyone want to censure me for that?
Listen,
Just
the
didn't
problem,
accept it.
the problem is not the letterhead at this point. You received the answer that you asked for. But the problem is you took that answer that was marked attorney-client privilege and decided that it was Facebook-worthy and share it with everybody. And what we're saying is that is not your sole decision to make. You are part of a collective who makes that decision.
You all agree with that?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
We abide by it, so I would say we agree with it.
Well,
Jay, back to my question. Can we do this on Monday night?
You know, there's provisions in your code of conduct that can be used to censor a member. It says you have to do a written censor. I can research that and prepare something for Monday night,
you
and
do
you
that?
can discuss it on Monday night of what you want to do.
Great, thank you, sir.
All right, then. What else, Counselor?
That's all for me.
Any questions for our attorney? Okay. Move into the new business segment. Monthly financial report. Does anyone have any questions on the monthly financial report this month? Hearing nothing, they will be up for approval on Monday. How about the accounts payable? Anybody questions for the accounts payable this month? Likewise, they will be up for approval. We have several bids to deal with on Monday night, and you're given copies of all that information. So take time to look over those and decide whether to accept the staff's recommendation on the bids, and we'll vote on those Monday night. One is for the trash hauling, solid waste and recycling. Next is for the biosolids. Next is to the street repair. Next is for the Commerce Street water and sewer lines. I believe that's what that was. And the final item here is something that's a little different. It's come up maybe a time or two before, but I bring this just to your attention for further discussion. We won't have to act on this Monday night, but this National League of Cities item is they have partnered with an insurance group that will warrant or insure the sewer and water lines that are connected from the main to the house. Right now, that distance, those pipes are the responsibility of the homeowner. So if anything fails between the main and the house, the homeowner has to fix it. Well, I'm not right?
No, it's the lateral that goes from the house to the valve. That's the homeowner's responsibility.
All
Not
right,
to the main.
not
'cause
the main.
Between there is a valve that shuts the water off, and that's when our,
Okay, all right, well, I stand corrected then. From the shut-off valve to the house is the homeowner's responsibility. So should that fail in any way, it's the homeowner's responsibility to fix it. The National League of Cities has partnered with this insurance company to provide a low-cost insurance to anybody that wants to buy it. No obligation. You make the decisions and purchase it if you want to. And that's what we'll talk about in the future. We right now, we're not part of that deal. So I asked a couple insurance people in town if that would affect them in any way, and they didn't seem to be concerned with that. So it's not something we're taking insurance away from some of our local underwriters.
So Mayor, is that something we would have to vote on to enter into?
Yes, Maryland Municipal League has sent out a letter to all the towns and cities in Maryland asking for participation, suggesting that it's a good idea and that we should consider it. So it's for your consideration. I mean, it's not going to affect the town one way or the other, but it could be a benefit to our citizens. That's
again, the main issue that we have to look and find out about is whether you have to be a member of the National League of Cities or not to participate.
But
in
if
this.
they came to MML,
Right. And if-
then it would appear not, because that's what I was thinking. We don't belong to the National League of Cities.
Correct. But MML does.
But MML does.
The opinion I have is that we don't, but I'm not sure of that. So we'll
Yeah.
clarify that before we pull the hammer. At one time, we were members of National League of Cities. And honestly,
Because that's more dues.
didn't
And quite
it didn't do
expensive.
us much good,
Yes.
but benefits like that, let's look at it and see what it talks about. So
So-
it's just an item for discussion. I'm not pushing it one way or the other. I'm just offering it for
Okay.
an option.
So, but the expense was a reason why we chose to stop participating in it before? Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a dues.
All right.
Membership dues.
thank you.
They're like triple what MML.
It was a duplication of MML effort, and I suppose if you're involved, it does the same thing MML does on a national scale. In other words, MML lobbies our General Assembly, and NLC lobbies Congress and affects laws that way, so. And again, I convinced everybody to join NLC when we joined, and after a year or two of participating, I wasn't convinced it was doing as much good, so I've not brought it up since. I'll put it that way.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have time for public comment for any item that happened to appear on the agenda. Does anybody have any comments on agenda items?
Catherine Adelaide, 9 Cortlandt Street. I guess it would be under the legal report. I guess speaking of the subject of the attorney-client privilege regarding the letterhead, I'm just curious, who authorized the placement of this official Taneytown seal on this unauthorized report? Who authorized the report? Did you all vote on it? Mr. Frazier, did anybody vote on this report? Who authorized this report, and then who authorized this official seal, like a letterhead? Isn't that what they accused you of putting out?
Well, I've changed the letterhead and asked for a second opinion, but apparently the attorneys have decided not to correspond with me about that up until this date. Whether or not I can write the art that Joe did for me.
The Corporation of
and put it on my
Taneytown can
letterhead.
use the
Joe
seal
drew
any
a
place they
beautiful
want.
picture of the cupola of this building.
So a sitting councilman
Not
can't
official.
use it on letterhead, but anybody, who authorized this? Was it voted on? Was this report initiated or authorized by the city council for the
Yes.
budget?
Councilman Frazier instructed our city manager to analyze his report and provide a report.
And I believe that his report was rejected for lack of a second. So that was not a proper subject for an independent consultant's very costly, although we don't have the complete amount, report. The council should have voted for some kind of authorization, or did the city manager? I'm just wondering, are you just going to target Councilman Frazier for putting letterhead on here, or?
He's the only one who violated the attorney-client privilege. That's all I was talking about. The subject of his letter is protected by the
Well,
attorney-client
just warn
privilege,
everybody
and
not
that's
to
why
get
we're
any
not
letters.
talking
Well,
about
it did involve the use of this emblem, I believe, and it doesn't seem like it's bothering anybody except me, that other people in the city are using this and nobody's really talking about it. Who authorized this report?
We answered your question. The
No, you
city
didn't.
manager was directed to look into the plan. He used Davenport, so the city are the ones who ordered that report. Now, the issue with his letterhead is it's a code of conduct violation. It clearly states in the code of conduct that council members are not to have their own letterhead. So our job is
You-
not to
but-
pick and choose which laws we abide by.
But you pick and choose which one you're going to apply. You did not
Because the
vote
city
to
ordered that-
authorize.
ordered
That-
that
When you
amount.
say this,
You're making no sense.
When
I
you
don't
say
understand
the
what you're talking about.
when you say the city,
Great for using that
who
seal.
authorized this report?
The issue is not
said the
whether
city.
the seal
I've
is.
said it
That's
twice.
not an issue.
When you authorize something, you vote on it.
The council
It doesn't have to be authorized.
The council all agreed that Henry would analyze this report.
When did they agree and with what vote? What was the vote count?
I didn't agree to that. I was stunned to see.
You were the one that said it originally.
No, I'm
And
stunned
his-
that
We
you
discussed this at the bu-
discussed
at
that
the budget
report
And
workshop.
his
during a
report was
budget year.
rejected for lack of a second, so that should have never been the subject of this. This was independently, without
Okay,
any
time's up.
authorization from the city.
Time's up. Please, take your seat. Anyone else care to make any comments on agenda items? Well, hearing nothing, do I have a motion for adjournment?
I'll second.
Can I discuss something before you adjourn?
I think it's done.
Would like to speak to the motion. You have a motion second before we adjourn?
No,
We don't-
unfortunately,
We don't
Okay.
speak to,
a motion to adjourn is not debatable, as we've said countless times to you.
right. We just need to call for the,
A call for the vote.
favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
No, I think it's inappropriate.
Oh, my.
Plenty of time to say what you had to say.